So good morning, everyone. Brilliant. I think we'll get started now because we've got quite a lot of the attendees here. Brilliant. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Laura Hodgkiss. I'm the event and training team leader here at Staffordshire Chamber of Commerce, and we're delighted to have you all here today for our webinar, Doing Business in Turkey. And for those of you that don't know, we can't see you today, so we will be doing an interactive session. So if you do want to ask any of the speakers today any questions, you will be able to do that live, and we can do that just by raising your hand, and you will find the raise hand function just at the bottom at the side by where you can see your name. So if you do need to raise your hand, you can do it that way. If you don't want to speak your question today, but you do want to ask a question, you'll be able to do it via the chat function at the bottom of your screen or the Q&A, which we'll do at the end as well. And today I have with me Chris Cord and Emirates Oz, and we're delighted to have them both here today just to talk about what Turkey are doing at the moment. And it's over to the two of you, and I think Chris, you're speaking first.
Yes. Well, good morning, everyone, and good morning, Staffordshire. Yeah, it's a part of the world I know reasonably well. In that my father was born in Cheddleton, just outside Leek, so I do have a family connection there. Yeah, just to give you a bit of background, I'm sure a lot of you are interested to understand how the COVID-19 has been handled here in Turkey. You know, it seems that no matter where we look or no matter who we talk to, that seems the topic of conversation. So we'll try and get that one out of the way pretty quickly. I mean, Turkey's done reasonably well in controlling the outbreak. You know, the numbers in terms of fatalities have stayed relatively small. There's been, you know, a major action in terms of lockdown. I mean, we've just gone through, I think now, 3 weeks where each weekend has been a total curfew. So from midnight on Friday through to Monday morning, you know, you've not been allowed out apart from essential requirements. There's also an ageist policy as well. People over 65 are not allowed out, and people under 20 are not allowed out. Don't ask me what the logic behind that is. I can understand the older ones, but the younger ones I'm not so sure. Like all countries, the government are keen to get Turkey back up and running, get the economy moving. So there are indications that some of the lockdown restrictions will be lifted, although they've made it clear that schools will not open until September. The tourist industry, as you would imagine, is a very high priority for Turkey, given, you know, its major contribution to the GDP and, you know, the number of British tourists who go to Turkey. It's very much a go-to destination. So they're doing their best now to try and encourage the tourist sector to open up and prepare for what's left of the tourist season. It's going to be difficult. I think everybody's aware of that. Even Spain, Italy, and the European tourist hotspots are going to struggle. Who's going to want to get on an aeroplane with a group of other people? I mean, it may sound like a nice thing to do, but yeah, I think you know, tourism will be relatively limited for this year. But as I say, the Turkish Tourist Board are doing all they can to keep Turkey on the radar and get, you know, the beaches open as soon as possible. But it will take some time. So overall, you know, Turkey's done, you know, particularly well in controlling the virus. It's not over by any means. You know, we're still seeing deaths. We're still seeing a rise in the contagion. Testing is increasing all the time, and given, you know, the borders that Turkey has with Iran and Iraq and Syria, and the amount of refugees that are currently located in southeast Turkey, we don't hear a lot about what's going on there. So yeah, there's always a risk that there could be a second peak. So I think that's all we need to say about that. Moving on to generally who we are and what we do, I'm going to hand over to Emra to cover that. I just want to give you a quick overview in terms of our relationship with DIT. We are a delivery service partner to DIT. We're one of the few globally that still are in that position. We are funded by UK government to deliver business services, B2B services to UK exporters and investors, and that's pretty much a large part of our workload. We are a membership organisation like all chambers, and we have a very healthy membership because we are the second oldest British chamber overseas, established in 1887. So we're 133 years old. Do I look 133 years old? I hope not. But anyway, we are a very old chamber, and because of that history that we have, a large proportion of our membership is Turkish that have UK business connections. So that's just a brief intro, but I'm going to leave Emre to go through the more business and structural details.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Laura, I know that was not on the program, but I have some, picture that I can share on my screen, if I'm allowed to do that.
Of course, not a problem at all, Emre.
I understand we are better. So I think people can see the screen now.
Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. So we are an organization, as Chris mentioned, established on 1887. And we have a long-standing history in Turkey. And as Chris mentioned, we are the strategic delivery partner for DIT since 2013. That means on behalf of DIT Turkey, we deliver B2B services to UK businesses who are looking to export or invest in Turkey. Of course, DIT is assisting British companies to export and invest, but we have priority industries. The distinction between DIT and BCCT Turkey, we mainly look after B2B inquiries, while DIT Turkey is looking for more G2G and B2G businesses. Again, as Chris mentioned, we have a wide business network in Turkey through membership, through our strategic partnership with the sector associations and private sector contacts, and which I will come later. We have an MOU with different chambers in Turkey. Overall, we have 400 members from 28 different industries. That allows us to touch on every single industry in Turkey whenever UK companies are looking to find a distributor or agent or sort of export area in such industries. And here are some our members, some UK companies. Our membership structure is basically pretty much both UK and Turkish companies are involved. And local chamber network is one of the asset in Turkey for BCCT. We have set up a strong local cooperation through MOUs with the 14 largest chambers in Turkey, and this gives us access to reach up 800,000 enterprises and most of our SMEs. So as you see from the map of Turkey, we highlighted Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir. So what we call this line as a golden triangle, where you can say almost 70% of Turkey's GDP is going through between those triangle, Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir, the biggest entities of Turkey, or I would say major companies are located themselves into such zones. And as we discussed before, we are the strategic delivery partner for DIT, so we are responsible to deliver services or assistance to the UK companies such as custom works, taxations, finding distributor, market analysts, competitor analysts, event management, etc. So far we have assisted until by the end of last year, we have assisted 3,060 British firms during that time, and you can see the segmentation of those industries that we assisted. I'm sure Chris will touch base on these ones, but on the economic potential side, Istanbul and Ankara are the biggest cities in terms of GDP, and Turkey has 82 million population, which labor force is coming to play on this. 32 million people are in the employment scheme. And I think it's worth to mention that Turkey's medium age is below 30. So this gives us companies to increase their capacity of labor and at the same time creativity. Gross domestic product, we had a good shift upward shift on Turkey's GDP over the recent years, but especially the last 2-3 years, considering the Syria, as Chris mentioned, and also the global recession, and at the same time some government policies, we have a stable GDP. And due to this COVID-19, there are some projections between 4%, 11% decrease for the upcoming year, but recovery is on the way. I think on 2021 and 2022, numbers are reflecting pretty much on downward shift of the minus figures. I talked about this, but you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, we have a median age of 30 in Turkey, and population is projected to maintain its growth momentum until 2069. It will peak at over 100 million in terms of Turkey's population. And how we market Turkey, how we promote Turkey, I think its location is one of the assets for Turkey. As you see from the map, it's in the middle of 4 big regions globally: Europe, Russia, Middle East, and Africa, North Africa market. So through Turkey, companies like Coca-Cola, Vodafone, Microsoft, and such all giants are located there, regional HQs in Turkey, where they can access 1.2 billion people from their Turkish base with a 4-hour flight distance. So you can see the details of the populations, GDPs of such zones from the map, and which I will share the presentation with Laura later on, so he can disseminate to the participants. Business culture as an expat, I think Chris, you can have a word about this. Mainly, I think you experienced this since you have a background of working on Coca-Cola for 20 years.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, just briefly. Yeah, the business culture in Turkey is very westernized, and I mean, as Emre gave a good example there about Izmir, Ankara, and Istanbul, the Golden Triangle. Yeah, and this is the major contributor to GDP. And if you look at the big players that are located in that Golden Triangle, particularly Istanbul and Ankara, you'll see that many global companies are hubbed out of these cities. I worked for Coca-Cola for almost 20 years. In this part of the world and other parts of the world. So yeah, I know the territory pretty well. I mean, Coca-Cola, for example, their hub office in Istanbul is responsible for around 90 countries. And if you look at Procter & Gamble and Unilever, Microsoft, Vodafone, Google, to name but a few, they all hub out of Istanbul. And so there's a very Western business culture here, and the quality of management in those companies is very high, and it's mostly Turkish. So if you look at the CEOs of these global companies that have head offices in Istanbul, I think the majority will be Turkish CEOs. So high level of international experience in terms of management. When you look at the financial sector, the major private banks all have majority investment from European banks. It's mainly the state banks that have domestic issues to deal with, but the other private banks, Guarantee Bank, Akbank, and Alternative Bank, they all have major European bank investors there. So it's very professional. I mean, just to qualify that in some respect is, if you're operating in that Golden Triangle, you're dealing with a very developed market business culture. If you're further east and you're outside that triangle, then we're into more emerging market business culture. So there is a difference there, and it's what we do to help companies understand what those differences are, and what toolkit they need when they're talking to companies, if they're in that golden triangle or they're outside that golden triangle. So yeah, it's a very dynamic business culture. Turkish businesses, local holding companies, some of the biggest in Europe. Koç Holding is a Fortune 500 company. Yeah, if any of you have got a white transit van or a Beko washing machine, that's manufactured by Koç Group, and they have massive business interests across the world. So this is the level of organizations that you're dealing with, and obviously the potential that working in that environment offers. As Emre mentioned, Turkey as a hub for the region is quite critical, and you'll find lots of Turkish companies that have a long established business involvement and engagement within the region in those emerging markets of Central Asia, North Africa, Middle East, Russia. And just to give you a British government perspective on this, we now have the world split into 9 regions, which for DIT, for the Department of International Trade. And Turkey's region is what we call the ECAN region, which is Eastern Europe and Central Asia. So our Consul General is also the regional trade envoy for that region. So she has 40 countries that she's responsible for in terms of trade, that stretch from Russia, Mongolia, Central Asia, Moldova, Belarus, Georgia, and Turkey. And that's another area that we are now involved in. So as well as looking at business opportunities, export opportunities in Turkey, we're now also expanding that into a more regional involvement together with the DIT team, the regional DIT team. So yeah, that's a brief update as to where we are in terms of the business environment. In terms of economic forecasts, I think nobody can actually predict at the moment. Nobody can actually predict what the outcome of the coronavirus is going to be in terms of its impact on the global economy. I mean, all the reports we read and the statements coming out from the IMF and the World Bank clearly indicate that the world will have a global economic crisis of one form or another, and all countries will be affected. So yeah, it's difficult to say just where Turkey will end up with that. There are certain predictions that Turkey could slip into some form of recession, along with many other countries. I mean, they're not going to be alone in that. But one thing that Turkey has always shown is resilience and its ability to bounce back, quite quickly from any major crisis. The same thing happened after the global economic crisis of 2008. So there is a resilience, and there's also a capability that I'm sure will stand them in good stead once we get through this this virus pandemic. You've done the Turkish market overview. Is there anything else you want to say there?
Yeah, it's pretty much. So I think we should touch on the opportunities, Chris. What do you think about which sectors will offer, opportunities for British exporters looking to export Turkish market? I think we should a little bit look into more specific. What do you foresee for the sectors?
Okay. Do you want to go through that?
Carry on, please. Carry on.
Well, I mean, the major sectors that we focus on, which we also share with our DIT colleagues. I mean, we're looking at advanced engineering, manufacturing, innovation, creativity. Also looking at education, agriculture will start to come into play. So these are all sectors that do offer considerable opportunity for growth in Turkey. And I mean, there are others. automotive is another one, and Turkey has a very strong automotive sector, as I indicated earlier. But one area where we are doing particularly well from UK is we're bringing that extra added value element of innovation and creativity, particularly technological innovation. I mean, Turkey is a great manufacturing country. You'll find, or you'll find Turkish manufacturers are probably as good as any other country in the world. But one thing that they've been focusing on over recent history is manufacturing for other organisations, component parts, textiles, for example. They don't have their own brands, so the intellectual property value in Turkey has been relatively low because they don't actually own it. But that is changing. And Turkish companies are now looking to move up the value chain and create their own intellectual property. They want to have global brands and be recognised as having global capability, but they're missing that sort of advanced manufacturing, high-level areas of technological innovation, and that's where we in UK have been providing that. And there's some strong examples of how that has actually started to work very well. I mean, we hold an annual technology conference here in Istanbul that's run by the DIT team and the DIT teams back in UK. And at our last event, which was in January, we had over 700 delegates to that, and a large contingent from UK who were visiting both the automotive sector and other tech sectors in Turkey. So we've already built up a strong platform there that we want to continue to develop. Just, I don't want to get into politics too much, but and I don't think this is political, it is a trade issue. I mean, what we're hearing from UK now is, particularly from the governments, UK governments, regarding their negotiations with the EU. They don't appear to be going terribly well, and time is running out. And the last thing we need is, the end of December and no deal. I believe that will have serious consequences on top of the impact of the coronavirus on the UK economy. So what we want to do is do whatever we can to make sure that we do have a deal with the EU, and bring it back here to Turkey, UK. It's important that we do have a deal, because Turkey currently has a customs union agreement with the EU, and if we don't have a deal with the EU, then that will have an effect on our trading relationship with Turkey. So, something we're desperate to avoid. We've got £18 billion worth of bilateral trade at stake here, so it's not small. And the team in Ankara, the diplomatic team, there's a special group there working with their Turkish counterparts to make sure that we have a seamless transition, and we don't create any barriers that will be detrimental to our future trading relationship. But as I say, it does concern me that the British government, what shall I say, seem to be running into all sorts of political arguments that could end up with a no deal. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. Okay, anything else, Emre?
I mean, thank you, Chris. But I just would like to touch on some points in terms of industries, what you talk about. So obviously, advanced engineering, you said, is one of the key areas in Turkey, because especially the automotive industry is pretty much active and well populated in cities such as Bursa and Kocaeli. And we had a delegation from UK last year, 2 delegations actually, for advanced engineering, and we understand that Turkey is enormously looking for advanced engineering know-how from the UK. There are too many companies on automotive, food and drink, textile, etc. But what they are lacking of is robotic system automations, basically advanced manufacturing know-how and advanced manufacturing system. This is an opportunity for UK companies, what I can say. You touch on creativity. Yes, creativity is one of the important industries that I foresee for within next 5-10 years. Turkey will need more know-how on that industry as they become, for example, one of the biggest soap opera or film producers. The Turkish enterprises, especially in Europe, if I'm not mistaken, Turkey is exporting 500 million pounds TV operations to North Africa and Middle East. So this is a giant number. It's second one on the list. Not also the production or TV side, but also there are other creativity issues. Companies like Flint, communication companies, museum organization, architectures, etc. All these industries are offering a good opportunity for UK businesses. Agritech, yes, Turkey is agriculture country, but again, lacking of technology to drive that agriculture into a business. So agritech is obviously one of the priority industries for DIT in Turkey. So companies looking to do business on agritech or agriculture, please do contact us. We can try to assist you as much as we can on agriculture industry. Obviously, technology, it's becoming more popular and popular globally, but especially in Turkey, we have lots of startup companies looking to work with UK companies. As Chris mentioned, annually DIT hosts UK technology conference here in Istanbul, and we are having delegation from UK at the same time. So you may want to participate to the next one if we will be going to having the next one, or hopefully next January and February. Please contact your local DIT offices to find out whether this event will take place in Istanbul next year or the following years. So you can become the part of the delegation and bring your business to Istanbul, where you can meet with Turkish distributors or Turkish joint ventures at the same time. Healthcare industry is one of the important, I think, that we need to touch. Lots of PPP projects has been handled by government, and lots of private investments has gone into healthcare industry. I think this is one of the key success of Turkey while handling the COVID-19. Number of intubations on the hospital comparable low with the Europe, so due to this hospital and new systems in Turkey. And the IT healthcare team in Turkey, they signed an MOU with Ministry of Health, so we have pretty much in good relationship with Ministry of Health in Turkey. And actually we were going to have a bilateral conference on healthcare in Turkey, but this was postponed due to the outbreak of COVID-19. Was supposed to happen on March, but unfortunately we couldn't host it. But we had a good relationship with Ministry of Health and my colleagues in Ankara and Istanbul on DIT. They've been liaising with Ministry of Health, and Turkey is in need of medical technologies. All these PPP projects are looking for new creative adventures, new creative ways to modernize their hospitals and etc. So healthcare is obviously one of the good sectors that offers a potential for Turkey. And lastly, I can talk about smart cities, I think, which is one of the hot topic for DIT and ourselves in Turkey. Istanbul and Ankara, the biggest cities in Turkey in terms of population. Istanbul's population is nearly 20 million, which is more than most of the Europe countries' population. And we have just passed through an election a year ago, and right now new mayor is looking to switch the city into a smart city on transportation, on mobility, on entertainment area, on leisure area, etc. So we hosted a smart delegation this year again, where we introduced them to the companies, because we have limited companies in Turkey in smart cities, and they are looking to transfer know-how, and they're looking to be a distributor for smart city mobility systems in Turkey. So smart city is obviously one of the key areas for UK exporters to focus on Turkey market. So this is basically my appetite for the industries, and I think we should talk on how BCCT can help you. It's pretty much the same structure of what DIT is doing. So if you're looking to assistance in Turkey, you can basically contact with Staffordshire Chamber or your local DIT offices. One of the ITAs will be assigned to your company, and if you have been already allocated, these ITAs pretty much experienced about the system. So he will transfer your inquiry to DIT or ourselves, depending on the size of the inquiry. If it's B2B, it will come to BCCT. And how we can assist you is basically, if it's piece of information or looking for market dynamics, we can assist you all the time. But if you are looking more comprehensive things in Turkey, like competitor analysis or business partner search, market analysis, event management, etc., we also assist on these services too. So if you go through bcct.org.tr, you will be able to see all our members, all the information, all the sector briefs, all the events that we hosted, all the companies that we hosted, the testimonials. It's pretty much like a small Bible for us. Please do engage with your local chamber or DIT offices in order to find out how BCCT and DIT Turkey can help you for the Turkish market and extensionally for the ECAN region, as Chris mentioned. So I think this is pretty much all what we can cover. We can go into Q&A session if Chris, if you don't have anything to add.
Okay. Yeah, just to add a little more. I mean, as Emma said, we handle all B2B inquiries from UK companies. So, as I say, there has to be a clear communication there. So, if you're dealing with your wonderful Laura in the chamber and you've got an inquiry, then if it's B2B, it's directed to us. If inquiries go to DIT, all they will do is refer them to us anyway. So we just want to make that communication clear. Another thing, we spend a lot of time now in UK working with the UK chambers, where we have roadshows. We had one in the latter part of last year, where we covered Northern Powerhouse. We were up in Manchester. We were in Coventry, Birmingham, Oxford, and London. That was quite hard work. It was 4 days of presentations and and discussions, and they were all extremely well received. And this is something that we want to continue to do once we get through this the current virus restrictions, to make sure that we do face-to-face engagement with UK companies, so that they can really get to grips with what Turkey has to offer, and the region now, because it's broadened out considerably, and products, services that may not fit just for Turkey, but they may fit other countries within the region, which we can also channel in the right direction. So as I say, lots of opportunity there, and as I say, we'd love to do an event with Staffordshire Chamber. Bring our team over, because we do have specialists. We have tech leads, we have financial services leads, we have manufacturing leads, who have extensive knowledge and experience of their particular sectors. So they're all ready and willing to share their experience and guidance as to where the opportunities are and what the level of potential will be. So we do offer, I'm pleased to say, a fully comprehensive set of services, and we've got a great team. I mean, Emrad's our CEO, and he's got a team of 8 people. We've got 5 trade advisors, plus people who deal with data and social media. So as I say, we've got quite extensive resources here that can help you in your journey into the Turkish market.
Wonderful, Chris. Thank you. I've just noticed there's a couple of questions. Would you like me to read them out for you?
Yep.
Brilliant. So we've got Manuel has just asked, are there any opportunities for UK food and drink producers in the Turkish market? It's quite a broad question.
As a drinker, yeah, I can. Yeah, there are. I mean, it's not easy. You know, obviously the food and beverage market in Turkey is quite strong domestically. So you know, lots of domestic players there, but there's not a lot of innovation in the sector. So you know, if you've got some innovative products, if you've got something that you know is more advanced or is more functional, and you have something that yeah, is going to attract you know the health and wellness platform, then you know there is a lot of opportunity. I mean, we've done very well here with organic baby foods, for example. We have a company that does very well with that. Even on alcohol, Diageo do very well. I mean, per capita consumption of whiskey is one of the highest in Europe. So there are opportunities. In terms of other beverage products, tea, I think would be a struggle. It's, you know, because tea in Turkey is very much a traditional drink, and you know, it's a massive market. But I would say there are opportunities in terms of you know, tea products that have more added value and more functional. We're seeing quite a lot of growth in herb teas and other medicinal teas that the big Turkish tea manufacturers have not got into yet. So yeah, I mean, whatever products you know the question comes from, if they'll just contact us and let us know what they're dealing with, then we can give them some guidance as to you know what the potential would be.
Manuel, it might just be worth, if it's okay with Chris and Emrah, just to obviously pass on your details, just pop them in the chat and I'll be able to put you in touch personally if there is something along the food and drink line that you've particularly got in mind that you want to ask about that. He's also asked another question. Are you going to organise any virtual trade shows in the next few months?
Yes, it has been discussed during our meeting with the IT. Yes, depending on the circumstances, the events that we are planning to have both in UK and Turkey can turn into a virtual event, such as teleconferences and sector-specific events. Yes, but it's still on planning stage at the moment, as the IT just switched on the new financial year at the beginning of April, and we just faced this COVID-19, and everything on the agenda has been changed, but we're working on it. And obviously, we will have some trade shows or events during the next financial year. This financial year.
Brilliant. Thank you, Emrah. And we've got a couple more questions coming in. So Richard just says, good morning. Our business is wheels and tyres. So we would be interested in understanding the opportunities for these products from Turkey here in the UK. Is there a database of suppliers in these commodities?
Starting from the left, yes, there is a list, but according to new GDPR systems, we are unable to share any kind of personal information with any company right now. What we can do is basically, if we can understand what sort of business our client is asking, we can dig down into and understand which companies we can introduce them through the mail. I mean, we need to make this introduction by ourselves, otherwise we, you know, pass on to limits of GDPR. So we should be careful about it. But if they can contact me in person, I can offer assistance of one of my trade advisors who are looking after automotive industry.
Is this is a question importing from Turkey or exporting to Turkey?
Actually, it does. I don't think it actually says. Let's have a look. Importing. He's just answered the question. Importing.
Importing from Turkey. Well, that's a different situation.
Yeah.
And I mean, the same applies. You know, send the detail to Emrah. I mean, we do know, you know, within the automotive sector that you know who the major players are, so we can give some guidance on that.
Okay, brilliant. So just having a look at other questions that we've got in. So Simon just asks, how is the healthcare market in Turkey? Our company is advanced in wound care and in medical devices. Therefore, we'll be focusing on hospital and clinics.
Chris, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, again, yeah, there are opportunities. I mean, there's been a lot of investments in, through PPP, healthcare investments in Turkey. The government have, they launched a major initiative to build, very state-of-the-art hospitals and big ones. I mean, we're not talking small ones here, and that's moving along quite well now. In terms of supplying equipment, we have had some success with UK companies who've been provided medical care products, hygiene products within the hospital environment. I mean, medical devices are always, if they're innovative, then they've always got a door we can open. I mean, there's another added benefit with Turkey, and that's through UK export finance. So UKEF, and I'm sure your members will, I hope they're aware of UKEF, they should be. There are only 5 representatives for UKEF globally in market, and one of them's here in Istanbul. That's how important UKEF see Turkey. And healthcare infrastructure projects, whether they're in Turkey, as long as it's a Turkish company, the projects can be outside Turkey, and UKEF can provide the necessary insurances, guarantees, even finance, if there's a minimum of 20% UK content in the supply chain. So if it's a hospital that's being built in, I don't know, Qatar or in North Africa somewhere, UKEF, and it's built by a Turkish company, UKEF can get involved in there, in terms of the financing. But what they'll be looking for is UK companies to provide a minimum of 20% in terms of services, equipment, technology, so that we get a benefit for UK in that project. Obviously, UKEF look for more than 20%. I mean, most of the deals that have been done recently have been in excess of 30%. But 2 of them have been in PPP hospital projects, where GE Medical have been involved in that in UK. So yeah, there are opportunities, but we need more detail.
For those of you that we've just took questions off and do want to chat to Chris or Emrah afterwards, Emrah's just kindly popped the details just in the chat box. So if you do want to note them down for anybody that does want any more questions answering. We've got a couple of more questions. I'm just trying to get through them as quick as I possibly can. So Sebastian has just asked if there are any opportunities for the UK insurance sector in Turkey.
Chris, I think you can better answer this. This is not falling into my expert zone, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I mean, we've seen Bupa in the last 18 months have made a major investment here on healthcare insurance. So they bought the biggest Turkish healthcare company, health insurance company, and they're obviously looking to expand their presence using Turkey as a hub into the region in terms of medical insurance. And there are, I mean, most of the insurance companies that operate here in Turkey are international companies. There are a few small ones that are Turkish, but the big players are mainly international insurance companies. But it's a growing market, and that's the interesting part. It's not been a market that's traditionally used or bought insurance, but it's something that is now growing, and you know, along with the housing market, the growth in you know, I mean, there were no mortgages here up to about 7 or 8 years ago. So there are many things changing here, and insurance is, you know, is quite a key part of that. So yeah, I mean, again, if we can get more detail, we can help you with that.
Brilliant, fantastic, Chris. I think we've just got time for one more question. It's just come from Mike. In the event of a no-deal Brexit, do you have a feel for the approach Turkey's government may take with regards to tariffs and VAT for goods services exported from the UK in 2021 and beyond? I accept that there's no guarantees in what you're about to say, but a general overview would be helpful. Difficult question. Last one, I promise.
That's a good question. It's a difficult answer. Yeah, I mean, what we would end up with that eventuality would be, you know, going back to WTO, and so, you know, there'd be the World Trade Organization tariffs, basically. But as I say, there's lots of negotiation going on, because it's obviously a very high priority issue for both countries. And I know for a fact that you know, both governments are looking to, if that actually happened, and we desperately hope it won't, you know, they both want to limit and mitigate for any risk in terms of disruption of bilateral trade. So I'm sure both countries will be looking at how they can manage tariffs that don't cause too many barriers to our trade, and maybe it'll work. Personally, I have reservations about that. I'm not sure, you know, that WTO is the right option. But as I say, we've got two willing countries here who want to make sure that, you know, whatever outcome we have, we don't create too much friction as a consequence.
Okay, brilliant, fantastic. That's the last question. So, and thank you again, Emra. You just popped your details again. Just want to thank all of the attendees really for popping your questions forward, and I hope you've enjoyed the webinar today. And for those of you that jumped in halfway through, I noticed that there's a couple of attendees that jumped in halfway through. There will be a recording of this on our webinar library on the Staffordshire Chamber of Commerce website. So if you do want to watch it again at your leisure, you're more than welcome to do so. I just want to say a massive big thank you to Chris and Emra today for just giving that really nice insight into Turkey and what Turkey are doing at the moment. So it's absolutely fantastic to hear, and you've got hopefully some good things coming along soon. So fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Laura. I mean, for facilitating this. Thank you.
No, absolute pleasure. For all of the attendees, like I said, we do have a copy on our website, and that's it from us. So stay safe today and enjoy the glorious weather. So,
Thank you very much.
bye everyone.
Bye.